advised.
Spoiler alert episode. Spoiler.
Please be advised. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All right, everybody. Spoiler Ep 34, Terminator Genisys. Just so you know, if this is your first time tuning in, we always have to say this. This is a spoiler ep, different than the regular ones. We're going to go into all the details, including the shitty ending and all of the dumb nonsense that was in this movie.
Now, the difference is nothing we can say will spoil the movie for you.
Yes, unless you have an alternative.
Unless you actually watch it.
Or you have a time machine that can then go back and make that movie better.
Right.
Look, if the premise of the movie is right, somewhere in an alternative universe,
a good movie was made.
A really good movie was made. That's the thing we've got to remember. In a different timeline, there were no Terminators, but there was a really excellent Terminator sequel.
Oh, God. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our guest, Wil Anderson, who has been on the show before. He's done the wonderful Pacific Rim spoiler ep.
Yes, that was rescued from the Rift.
That was
right. Well, that was destroyed by the machines.
By the machines.
Because we were getting too close. Right.
I think...
Can we start with the name?
Yeah.
Genisys. This Terminator Genisys. It's a terrible name.
Right, and they think they're being clever because the Skynet... there's this thing called Genisys, and it's basically the cloud.
Oh, yeah, spoilers. Right. Skynet is Genisys. Yeah. Genisys is Skynet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh.
Wow.
That's an amazing thing that no one could have guessed before they came in.
Like system. Genisys, yeah. But you know what I kept thinking of, though? Sega Genesis, where I played Sonic. Right. On my, on my video game. That was it.
That was a fun game.
I will say this at the beginning, like we were talking in the regular episode. The intention was there. Everything just got, the soup of like making something like retro, making it interesting, making it fresh, and all those things combined. But at the end of the day, it was rancid.
Well,
none of it paid off.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. You had an excellent movie, and then Skynet sent back from the future a Terminator that just writes stupid dialogue. It was the dumbest goddamn dialogue.
It was unbelievable.
It was. Yeah. I wanted to. The first couple, I was like,
someone must have given a note, like, make it more like Transformers.
Okay. Well, the first thing was, I think, in that problem was it's PG. Like, it's a PG film. And if you think about the original two Terminator films, they were, I think both of them.
They both are.
Yeah, they both are.
Yeah.
Right?
That right there sums it up. That's an excellent.
Actually, you know what? Pull Terminator 2 up if that was R, PG-13. Because Terminator 1, for sure.
Because there was a darkness to the story back then. Like, you're sending like a cyborg, back from the future.
The Terminator was R, T2.
Yes. Now, if you read some of the backstory of like how when Terminator was made, like James Cameron was getting fucked over by studios. He was in a really dark place, and that's when he wrote Terminator. Because when you watch this movie, you're like, well, there's a real kind of personal darkness in it, and it really comes through. And it's
Terminator 2 is R.
Oh, it's still R. Okay, well there you go.
Both movies are R. Terminator 2 was just James Cameron now having the budget
to do expand
even more,
the story.
to expand the story, and did all. It was like everything. It was one of the better sequels we've ever seen in terms of like it did everything a sequel should do.
He was flying high off. Like this is like his golden age of sequels when he did like Terminator 2 and Aliens 2, and it was like, oh my god, he's the guy that you'll hire to do a sequel.
Yeah, he was making the franchise better.
Yeah,
Titanic 2 would have been great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they rescue the boat or
They send a Terminator back from the future.
Yeah.
With a submarine to rescue everybody.
They find aliens on the ocean, the bottom of the ocean, and then they find some blue people on another planet, and then fall in love with them.
All right, so I mean, where do we start? Do we go to the ending and just?
Yeah, we could definitely start with the end, but let's start with the entire timeline. What you're trying to do is, I couldn't believe how boring it got when you're trying to retell Terminator 1 and 2. Okay, yeah, I saw them many years ago. You don't have to show me the exact same movie again. And it was so forced and contrived. Like, oh, we're in the 80s. Someone's going to have a mohawk. That's, like there's a punk. Okay, well, great. There's an 80s punk rock band. Of course, that's where he's going to land.
Yeah, and watch out, guys. He's running into Green Day.
Right.
Shit, the Terminator's at the Warp Tour, guys.
The Terminator came back to a bad movie cliche of what thugs in the 80s were.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I was expecting him to go, "Hey, old man, give us your money."
And then start breakdancing.
Yeah, or drag chains on the ground or something. Like, what was that?
You're in the wrong part of town.
Oh, hey, Gramps, what are you doing driving my car? Like,
right.
you know.
I'm terrified if this guy just spent 8 hours doing his makeup and hair.
Yeah. And it was, and all the extra CG that was like to make, the young Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was like all these wasted opportunities.
You know, I'll tell the CG thing's a really interesting thing because I don't think I was impressed. Like that, I remember that scene in Terminator 2 and, where like the Terminator's walking and and it's one of those moments where you're just like, hang on, like CG, what they're doing now with all this stuff is like amazing.
Right.
Like it really blew your mind. And there's nothing in this film that
blows your mind at all. No.
Nothing.
There's
nothing. I gotta say this one thing though. At first I was like, okay, they're going back to 1984 in the beginning of the movie. They're going back and then they get back there and then the timeline has been, something's different. That was the one moment I was like, okay, cool. Because at first I was like, what are you guys just doing, a scene for scene reshoot? Like, what is this?
If something's different, make it different. Make, dogs walking people.
Right.
Make it different,
Dogs walking.
Make it different.
No, but I think
what the fuck?
But he doesn't even have to be that different. They've introduced two really strong concepts, which is one that like John Connor, like this hero, has been raising this like child, this like to be like his kind of son, but also be his friend, but raising him and indoctrinating him the whole time to then because he's going to send him back in time to fuck his mum. I mean that alone is an interesting like concept you could deal with. But then the other one,
it has to happen.
Right. For him to exist.
For him to exist. And that's, I love personally that time travel dilemma or quandary.
But there's even
why should I send you?
Right.
They even build up to that moment. Which
the fact that he also gives them the option to like if people are we're going to come, we're going to go, whereas the whole time he knows that it has to be this one guy for this to all work out.
Right.
That's an interesting concept. Yeah. Like how much you push someone into something or
do you think for a second he was like, well, maybe I should have a different dad.
Right.
And he's just going through, maybe you would be better.
But then he goes back and Sarah Connor, and this is interesting as well. I think they set up an interesting thing, which is that she's aware that she, has sex with this guy who she's never met.
Right.
She already knows this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So if you already know it's going to happen.
She already knows how to fight the Terminator.
Right. And she already knows that he's going to die.
Right.
So how do you, that's an interesting concept.
Sure.
Right. You've sent that back. Okay. That's great. I feel like you've set up some things that could be really interesting.
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. I think there was definitely some cool setup to this movie.
I think a lot of obviously we talked about this in the regular episode, but it bears repeating. Is obvious the main problem was this script had.
Yes, it was a mess,
giant. And I think there was some casting problems here too. Because
can we talk about Doctor Who?
Yep.
Speaking of casting problems, that was the biggest one. When you have a completely recognizable actor, like especially when you're doing a pan of background characters, that's immediately what I thought. Is that Doctor Who as a background character?
What scene is this? I don't remember this.
He was Skynet.
He's Skynet because Skynet's actually a person in this. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and because they're like, well, that can't be. That, like, oh no. And then, of course, he comes out of the background and grabs John Connor. And you're like,
that
well, I guess
scene was so goddamn dumb where Skynet.
Oh, we're going to see him again then, obviously.
Yeah, where Doctor Who just keeps appearing and then they just shoot the cameras to shut down Skynet.
Oh, there's nothing that people enjoy more than some people running around in a generic factory talking to a hologram and shooting cameras.
Now,
that's what I want from my movie.
Now, there was something really interesting about Skynet being like a child and learning, and that's another thing that did not get explored. Right. Was at all interesting?
A great concept, that they just could not
because technically you look at it like, well, it wouldn't start off evil. It's learning. Right. So it's a child. So you would have these logical reactions that a child would make if it were a computer, and you don't have any of that. It's immediately Skynet's immediately, we're going to eradicate you. I'm like, oh, so you're evil already as soon as you're self-aware. Like, you don't, there's nothing to make that conclusion.
But also what I love about the Skynet,
turn us into machines, human batteries, maybe. Right.
We're definitely going to do all that. We're going to, kill all humanity. That's what we're definitely going to do. But we're never going to develop a Terminator that can fly or has rockets.
Right.
Because we can't conceive any time in the history. I mean, we'll develop one that you can touch another person and then turn into that person.
Yeah,
we're never going to put any boosters in the. Like, are you kidding me?
Liquid metal,
right?
Yeah. That can take other shapes,
right?
But why have him fly?
Yeah.
Doesn't make.
They're too heavy.
I want to get back. I want to get back to the.
Look, we can make them fly, but you gave us a budget.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we don't have unlimited funds.
Yeah.
You gave us a budget, and we're trying to meet our targets. So you know what? You can have them fly, or you cannot have them fly. How often do you think you need them to fly?
So the Skynet.
We already have airships. You don't need them to fly.
The Skynet engineers are like, you want it quick, fast, or cheap?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying in the Skynet.
You know what? You want them to fly? I can get them to you by, say, January. Maybe you don't want the ones to fly.
Yeah, by then the humans they're gonna launch a counterattack.
I can get them running by the end of the month. You want them flying? Now that's another 9 months. That's gonna take some time.
I mean, that's an extra. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't come standard. I can get you one that flies. It's gonna cost you a little more.
Here's the problem I had with the casting, and this is by their own design. You're going to go back to 1984.
Yeah.
So then you're going to get all of us going, oh, remember the original Terminator?
Right.
So as we talked about, again, the woman from Game of Thrones, I don't watch that show, but I'm sure she's a fine actress.
She is.
She's
yes.
great. Okay.
But again, wouldn't know it from watching her.
Right.
In this
and
movie.
Also, Linda Hamilton does such a great thing in the first one of just being, the first one was revolutionary. So now this is a problem of any sequel, especially when now this is the fifth one. So it's the fourth sequel. Is the first one was just revolutionary because it was like, what the fuck? This is awesome. And that's what made it great. But then you cast Michael Beale, who's was one of those guys that never quite blew up. He probably should have. I don't know why. But when he came in as Kyle Reese, he was this gritty Bean, whatever. Yeah. This gritty dude who was like, John Connor's a great man. He's your son. He's just like war. So now
he was Cameron's go-to guy too.
He was Cameron's go-to guy. He was awesome. Yeah, he was great in The Abyss as the like mean soldier. He played this great sort of like his face just looked weathered.
But you felt like in the world that he came from, that they had to do some terrible things to survive.
Right. You know that this
which is the whole point.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You believed it.
Yeah, you believe that guy shows up, you go, God, the future must be fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie,
Jai Courtney is like, the gang from the nice team, he must have a spa and a really good looking stylist and
it's the complete opposite. And this is so in the original one, this is the perfect example of what's wrong with this film. In the original one, you don't see that big battle scene that we get at the start of this one, but you know from the person who's come back how terrible it must have been, and your imagination is always going to be worse than what you can show us. In this one, they show you that meaningless battle scene at the start.
Right.
Meaningless. I don't care about any of these characters or people yet, and you're making them fight and run around and shoot.
And they showed some clips from San Andreas at the beginning. Yeah, so we know what happens.
I mean, Terminator fighting The Rock, I would have said I'm down with that. But yeah, this one showed you everything, and then you send back this guy who feels like he has not been touched by anything of that in any way. There's no darkness.
He was a boy
to him. There's no
that
got saved.
Jai Courtney has the face of like a fresh recruit who came off of a like all-American football team.
Who would wash out of basic training.
Yeah, who would wash out of basic training. And his character was, saw his parents, wiped out and was living on the streets at age 9 or 10, so he's terrified. So his whole childhood is born in the cauldron of an apocalyptic horror show. Right. And he is just clean shaven, and he's just a good looking young lad, and like
kept it fresh and positive.
Yeah, good for him. Push-ups in the morning, and probably a nice vegan shake. And
and also too, you look at the first Terminator movie. There were a lot of horror elements to it too. You've got basically a killer tracking you, and it had you have this sci-fi horror. Whereas, granted, the second one went more just science fiction action, but You don't have even any of those elements in any of the future.
Well, here's what I would say about this movie, and it's the problem anytime you go into an alternative reality, an alternative universe, you've suddenly basically just said, it doesn't really matter what happens to any of these characters.
Right.
Because next time
true,
we can reboot it again and they can be back and whatever.
You know, we have a TARDIS and a Time Lord.
Yeah.
So, we can
exactly,
go back.
like, why should
But we're also comic book fans, you know.
Right.
Now there's like the death of Superman, the death of Spider-Man. You're like, yeah, okay, for now. But like,
exactly.
check back in 3 months and there's like, oh yeah, Spider-Man's back.
Oh.
Yeah,
so none of us are...
You found Captain America.
Right.
None of us are that vested in it. And I want to go back, though, to what you got, you brought up in terms of, in the first Terminator, Will, you were saying how it was left to our imagination. And then T2 showed us those battle scenes and they're stepping on the human skulls. And it was like, oh, God.
And they were more stylized,
They were stylized and they were horrifying.
And they would kill humans. Like, this is the difference as well, is that they would kill humans in a very rational way. But it was like they didn't care about humans. They would just kill them. And in this one, they barely kill any humans at all.
Like and that's still okay. So then let's go to the dumb scene where Kyle Reese, you know, played by Jai Courtney, is in the time machine, and
they kill more humans in the older time than the actual battle times.
Oh yeah,
you know,
and more people died of natural causes during the 2 hours and 6 minutes the film was on than died at the hand of the Terminator.
Well, so he goes in the time machine at the last minute. We see John Connor get, you know, grabbed by a Terminator, and so you're just at that point. That's when I was like, all right, so John Connor is... So the minute John Connor shows up in the movie, you're like, he's a fake.
Right.
Right? Like, there's no question.
Because it's not... There's no... it was foreshadowed. I mean... I don't know what happened to him.
But and this is where it really started to fucking shit me. Because I imagine when I went in, just from the trailers and stuff, I was like, John Connor will be a Terminator. Like, that was kind of my thing. And there was a bit of me that went, if someone walked into a pitch meeting and said to me, here's our idea for the new Terminator, here's our twist on this... Right. There's a thing that happens and John Connor becomes a Terminator himself. Well, okay. Yeah, cool. That's a fucking cool storyline. And I could see a really cool movie being made with that. But they just didn't, they did it.
They didn't find
anything with it.
And also the logic.
This guy who's become this super, like, he's the only person who can best the Terminators. And now you've mixed him with Terminator. Like, he should be this person.
Now he's a hybrid. Willing
to do everything and anything and unstoppable and terrifying. And, like, you know, this... You know, like, he's the super, like, he's the worst of both, like, combined together. This is someone who you should honestly feel like, in this universe, in this film, because that's what they can do, you might say, hang on, they might all just die.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you should have at least at some stage in that film felt like, fuck, they could all die. Yeah. Whereas less of them die. You know what I mean? Like in the original, the whole point is like he dies and then he doesn't die in this one. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
And you knew.
Like, even the deal didn't make any sense. Like, oh, well, I'm John Connor, but I'm part machine now. But you know, I'm offering you a deal. Well, why would you offer me a deal if you're a machine? That's obviously, and what would that deal look like? You'll kill all the humans but us? It's like it made, and I want to get into a lot of that dialogue made no sense.
The Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor rom-com banter like this
that had absolutely no chemistry with it whatsoever.
It was so fucking annoying. Like, I wanted to sit them down and go, hey, idiots, there's a fucking apocalypse happening. Shut the fuck, either fucking throw down and then fucking load up. Like,
there's so
maddening.
There was more chemistry between in Game of Thrones between her and the dragon.
Right.
And then the whole time as it's starting to wind down, I'm like, and I said to my friend, I go, you know, the ending is going to have like it's how the Simpsons mock
sequel tread up.
Simpsons mock movies that have dun dun like they show the hand. I go, you know, is the Terminator dead or is he?
I mean, because they
right out of an 80s movie.
They cleverly just 10 minutes beforehand like bring that up for no reason. You know, where they're like, that's fine there without, as long as the thing doesn't fall into the thing.
Yeah.
Like, seriously? Come on.
It's like that ending, I can't even...
Well, this whole thing was rubble and everything was crushed except this one part.
Right.
That,
There's one like
okay, but also speaking of the ending,
and still had power.
There's that incredibly stupid thing at the end, which if you're making again a timeline movie, there's way too many times where the character is talking to themselves for me for a timeline movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is one of our basic kind of understandings of like when you're talking about time travel in a movie like this, is that you just don't go and hang out with yourself. And you don't literally the hook of the film is something that he tells his young self, like he whispers it to his young self.
That made no sense.
It makes no sense.
It was one of those...
even in the universe you've set up. And also, if that was the one time machine that meant that you guys could get back, like that you could time travel.
Oh, but no, everyone built one. There was a time machine everywhere.
Right.
Everyone had one. There was one in the future. There was one in the 80s. They were building one in, 2016
right,
too? Everyone had one.
But what's happening to Kyle and Sarah and those guys now?
I know.
Like, are they just now living in the same world as... Because he can't have sex with her and have himself in the same world where his self... already,
right.
That doesn't make, like, that
doesn't make no sense.
That makes no sense.
That scene at the fucking farmhouse made me so mad where he goes to his son and tells him, I'm like, wait
tells
a minute.
him the thing that was the hook
just
of
defeated, wait, I thought so you wouldn't need to tell him. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he wouldn't be there.
Right.
He basically just went up to his son and to his younger self and went, sequel.
Yeah.
Like, it was just...
The only thing that would have made sense is if, as he was having that conversation, one of them started to disappear.
Right.
Because one of the timelines wouldn't exist anymore.
Oh, no. But, Chris, that would require you to actually fucking think out what story you're writing. Like, did these guys even... You know how you write a story and you have cue cards?
Yeah.
3x5 cards. And did they even fucking buy those? No, like, what do these idiots do?
It was too expensive. All the money went into the Terminators. And I will say the most amazing special effect was that they made J.K. Simmons uninteresting.
Oh. What a great... And that should have been so great.
Yeah.
He's... So the young cop from the 80s... Right. That gets
witnessed all this,
gets his life saved. Again, that was a cool part.
Again, a great premise.
Remember T2?
Right.
They show the footage. This guy fucking walked in 7 years ago.
Yes.
Of course.
Right.
Of course there would be guys on the force going, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And you know what else you could do? You could have government guys sweeping it under the rug.
Right.
Look,
but someone's going to know about it.
Someone's going to know about it. But no, they just have this like bumbling like
this conspiracy theory guy that either would have been fired because he's clearly a nutbag, or
and a drunk.
And a drunk. They said he was a drunk.
Yeah,
What,
he's an alcoholic. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Why aren't you firing me?
Right. I'm clearly bursting into areas of meetings I have not been invited to and I'm not welcome at all times. Like, how many warnings do I get? I'm on my 19th warning.
Yeah.
But,
You know. Like, what do I have to do to get fired from this gig?
They toy on an interesting idea at the end that I think would have made a different Terminator movie, but an excellent movie, which was, what if, because in this one, because they never explain the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, the T-800, I guess it is, that gets sent back and who's raised Sarah Connor. That's why she knows all the stories and stuff, and it's actually changed the timeline into where, John Connor has become this sort of, that's the universe they're living in now. They toy on this idea of like, what if who sent him back? What if the actual plot was, like, not to kill any of them. The plot was to send him back and let him raise her as if he was helping her. But the whole time, he's a Terminator, he's a killing machine, and the whole program for that whole time was to just steer them away from, doing what needed to be done for that to happen.
Right.
That's, like, that was when they kind of, like, they touched on it just for a second, and I was like, oh yeah, because he says, because Terminators always kill, they're always like, and their mission is to just, it's like, what if they sent back one to play the long game? Do you know what I mean? Like, just to change time rather than...
The long machine coming.
Right. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that would have been cool. I would have watched that film.
Any of those.
Here's what I would say to anybody who's thinking of seeing this film because you love the Terminator mythology. Watch the trailers and then just lie down for an hour and a half and imagine a film in your head.
Yes. You'll really
it will be
enjoy
better.
Or just watch 1 and 2 again.
Yes. You know what I remember about the other movies, other than 1 and 2, is that there was one really cool Terminator that had motorcycles driving off of its arms.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
That was like, oh my God, that was like cooler than any Transformer.
They didn't feel like they had any new stuff in this one.
No.
There's nothing. I didn't see any
like
piece
even
of
a fucking Swiss Army knife has more shit going on.
Yeah.
Than Terminator.
It's like,
Like, you really have just got stabby arm and
Yeah.
Like, is that it?
Which
They
we've
look
seen
exactly
again.
the same,
We've seen the little piece of metal stays on the car, so it becomes liquids. We've seen there was nothing.
Yeah, there was not. We were watching a rehash of the movies that we've already seen, and just two of them.
And I reckon the Terminator, when the Terminator movies are good, they have one really, like, I think James Cameron directs action in a way that's very sort of like, I don't know, balletic is probably the wrong way to put it, but there is like a sense of opera to it or something, or like a sense of occasion. Whereas this one, there was so much action, but none of it felt
none of it
felt like
no
that's
style
that set
to it.
piece.
Yeah.
That bit, that great moment you remember on the,
It had no style to it at all. And if you look at the way Cameron directs action in both Aliens 2 and in T2, there was a real style to it. The other thing that's interesting, too, is he had a real reliance on practical effects, because even in T2, where you had the metallic CG, basically liquid metal Terminator, there was still many, many practical effects as well. Do the effects hold up now? No, of course not, because it was a long time ago. But I remember watching that T2 in the theater thinking this was absolutely revolutionary and groundbreaking. Not only the effects, but how they were used.
Right. We
never even thought of like a liquid Terminator that could turn into other things.
Remember the first time you saw that?
Right. There was none of those like wow, like aha moments in any of these following movies. Like, oh, I've never seen that before. That's really cool. And that's what this movie especially needed. It just, it relied too much on fans that are already fans of Terminator. Like that's all this movie was relying on. Oh, we're gonna get the people that's
fan fiction or fan art.
That's really what it felt like. It felt like $150 million fan movie, because all you're doing is you're doing fan service to the people that are already there that are going to go see it anyway. But you're not showing us or doing anything new or interesting that even the fans want to see. We've already seen everything that you've just shown us.
Yeah, it was just. It was
a missed opportunity,
and everything was.
It also they did have a touch of that, when a Saturday Night Live character has really hit because they've got one good catchphrase and they're trying to get a second catchphrase.
Right.
There's a couple of times where you're like, are you still trying to jam? What am I old? But I'm not like.
Yeah.
Whatever. Not obsolete.
Baby.
I'll be back and come with me if you want to live. Is there? Well, did you miss any? Are they all there?
Did we get them all? Oh, this time she says it. That's their big twist.
That's the twist.
Yeah.
Oh wow! And this time he's naked. And then
Okay, so let me ask you this then. If they were going to make another Terminator film, like if they were, which they're the ones in the schedule, there's a sequel to this one in the schedule, but whether it was that or whether they're going to, whether you were just going to shake it out and etch-a-sketch it and start again.
I'll tell you what it should be.
I'll
tell you exactly what it should be. We talked about this on a previous episode. There's a great mini-series comic book, Terminator versus RoboCop, that Frank Miller wrote. And it's absolutely fantastic. And it goes into how, when Murphy was created as the RoboCop, that was the genesis of Skynet, and how and that's basically you have RoboCop fighting and going back and forth through time and fighting, Skynet and the Terminators. It's great. That's what I would do. That's the only way you could really up the ante and make it interesting.
Yeah, I would also take some of the elements from the Sarah Connor Chronicles that were on Fox a couple years ago.
I forgot about that.
That was a really interesting show because it filled in. They did a smart thing. They filled in parts of the timeline that are always just sort of talked about. Oh, well, she trained herself to get ready for the battle after she learned about it.
I forgot that one had a girl Terminator too.
Yeah, and that one was really cool because, well, first of all, it was really well cast. She played the woman they cast as the Terminator was great. The young John Connor was really well cast. And then
it didn't last very long.
It didn't last very long because part of it is, and this is the problem of this whole franchise and universe, is they keep changing the goddamn timeline. They keep changing everything. And they're not changing it in an interesting way like, holy shit, this can change. You don't know what's happening next. They change it just in these like haphazard ways. They're just like, we'll just change this. We'll just change that. So I would do what you're talking about, Chris. The RoboCop versus Terminator. And I would incorporate more of Sarah, and because we've seen John Connor as a boy and we've seen him as full-fledged soldier.
Right.
So fill in those gaps.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then do this thing like what they're doing with Star Wars: A New Hope. Then maybe we actually defeat them. Then what the fuck world? How do you rebuild that world?
Right.
And all of these little tribes and like, how do you rebuild that world? That would be interesting to me.
I agree.
Because I've seen enough of this, like, oh, what's the Terminator's not dead? What's next? Like, yeah, you got it. Like,
and he's going to go back in time again.
Yeah, right. He's got a time machine, so I'm going to go back before you and kill you. I mean, you're going to go back and kill me with the thing, but what part of my liquid metal is still alive in the thing? And
if you constantly do that, then there's no stakes.
None.
There's just no stakes.
None. That's what the problem is. You just said it right there. There's no there hasn't been stakes since Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And like that's what I would do. So we'd love to hear your guys' comments about what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially hit the message boards or the Facebook page. And what's the Terminator movie that you would like to see?
Yeah, and did any of you guys like this?
Yeah, let us know. And what did you like about it?
There were some bits and pieces in it.
Yeah,
I liked
for sure.
There was some moments
that
were kind of fun.
But they were overshadowed by dumbness.
Yes.
You couldn't string enough of them together to overlook the problem.
Yeah, you've got one string of tiki lights with only one or two lit.
Yeah. Get a full string of tiki lights.
Get a full string of tiki lights. You'll have a party.
Absolutely, tiki lights are the analogy.
I mean, even
and let your dog walk you every once in a while.
Even the Steve Jobs character or the Bill Gates character or whatever,
right.
The guy who's like ahead of the opera, like that's
right.
Why isn't that a character? Why are you getting to the complexities of this person who's like pushing the boundaries of what you can do with
I'll give you a goddamn new Terminator movie. Take the end of Ex Machina, and that's like where she goes out in the world, and now she's like, so the first Terminator like that lives among us but isn't trained to kill us yet. You know what I mean? There's a fucking interesting story.
They should re-release it and just call it Terminator Ex Machina.
Yeah.
They'd probably do a lot more business, and people would see a much better movie.
Yeah. Yes. And add a dinosaur.
Boom. Well, cool, man. I think that's our Terminator Genisys episode.
That was great.
That was a great one.
Well, thanks, Will.
Will Anderson,
thank you very much.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Wil_Anderson on Twitter, and my podcast is called TOEFOP, and there's also Willosophy with Wil Anderson, and all my dates are on my website, wilanderson.com.au.
And TOEFOP, of course, FOFOP, whatever you want to call it, is going to be in this year's Los Angeles Podcast
It's an alternative universe. FOFOP is basically TOEFOP Genisys.
Nice. It's in the cloud.
So Charlie is coming back from the future to fight the original...
I'll give you a really quick explanation, because when he left the podcast, it was called TOEFOP, and when he left the podcast, we joked previously, because we talked about alternative universes a lot, because we love that TV show Fringe, which also has them. And we were talking about this alternative universe where Charlie was successful and had to leave the podcast, and I'd have to start one called FOFOP, where I got guest Charlie's, and then he got successful and left the podcast. But now he's back. He's back as well. So it's always a special occasion when we can do a live show with Charlie back.
Cool. Well, those guys will be at LA Podfest. And, of course, we're trying to set up screenings of Earbuds in Sydney and Melbourne and maybe even Adelaide in, like, October-ish. So, I don't know. If you're in Australia that time, maybe you'll be a Q&A on one of them.
Yeah, that'd be great, actually. Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So we're going to work on dates for that. So thanks, guys. And, of course... like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Even if you aren't that into those things, those numbers actually help.
It always helps, for sure. Good reviews on iTunes, and if you want to support the show, buy something in the store, or if you're going to buy something on Amazon or iTunes, go through our site first, and we'll get a little taste.
I just bought it. My mom's like, "What did you want for your birthday?" I was like, "Well, my blender just broke. I can't make my vegan smoothies after yoga." And she's like, "Well, we have this wonderful new blender. You want me to get you one of those?" I said, "Why don't we go through Amazon?" And
there you
go. Click. So I got some vegan smoothies, and I'm getting a little kickback.
Oh, perfect.
Boom.
Vegback.
Not a word, Chris. That's not a word.
Hashtag Vegback.
I can't endorse that. I can't endorse that hashtag. All right, guys. Well, that's our episode. Tickets to LA Podfest.
I wonder what it just feels like for a mother when she asks her adult son what he wants for his birthday, and he says the expression, "I need a blender for my vegan smoothies after yoga." I wonder if she feels like she's made good decisions raising you or not.
Well, I will tell you what, Will. If you know my mom, she is ecstatic. She is a hippie artist. Oh, God. She lives on a hippie farm in Oregon. You know, she,
okay, that's a lock-in.
Yeah, she's like, oh, thank God my boy's raised correctly. All those years of him playing football, I thought I failed.
Well, I'd like you to run that sentence by my dairy farmer father.
Whose name is Graham, right?
Yeah, Graham, but not spelled the same as you. He's Grahamy.
He's got the old Scottish ones. Exactly. So it means it's a Scottish word, I think, meaning heroic with the E at the end.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Your dairy farmer's a hero.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, that's our episode. Thank you so much, Wil Anderson, for stopping by.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
And, like us, follow us, all that business.
It all helps for sure.
We'll see you at LA Podfest. My name is Graham Elwood.
And I'm Chris Mancini. And as always, remember,
Han shot first.